Have you ever felt like you were stuck in a cycle of exhaustion, distraction, and dissatisfaction? Maybe you struggle with anxiety and or ADHD. If so, this episode is for you. Welcome back to the Broken to Brave podcast. Today I have Theresa Levine on the podcast with me, and I am so excited to share her with you. She has an intriguing story that has resulted in her having an immense amount of passion to help others who struggled with the very things that she struggled with. Without further ado, I'll go ahead and introduce her. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Theresa.
Absolutely. Sure thing. Thanks so much for having me, Steph. Appreciate it. I'm glad to be here. So I'm Theresa Lear Levine. I am an EFT master, a hypnotherapist, and the founder of Becoming More Me. And I live in Maryland. I'm a mom of 4 boys, currently between the ages of 8 and 20. And I love helping other entrepreneurial ADHD women and professionals to overcome these feelings that so often hold us back, and to also realize that they're not alone in them.
Yes, not alone. I personally felt very alone before I started my healing journey, and I felt different from others, and I didn't know how to manage my emotions and just broken. And so I love when I meet other women who can resonate with at least some of that and are helping women not feel that anymore. Yeah. And 4 boys. Wow. I have 2 girls and I'm like, oof, I don't know if I could be a boy mom. I'm like, these girls are wild. And I hear people like, you think they're wild? They are not wild.
Oh, I don't know. Girls can be pretty wild. So yeah, I don't think one is easier or harder. That's for sure.
Yeah. So I would love to hear more about how life was before you started your healing journey, what you were struggling with, anything in particular that happened, how you looked at life, just like paint that picture for us.
Yeah. So I think we're always on a healing journey. I think it has different levels and different intensities. But I think from the moment that we kind of come into the world, we're on that journey. We just recognize it more in different places. And there was a pretty good pivot point for me about 10 years ago now. And before that, there was a lot of things that were kind of accumulating that hadn't really been dealt with in the way that I learned to deal with them then. So we could go back super far. I mean, there's all the things that come about through our lives, right? My parents separated when I was in grade school, and that kind of created some emotional wounds. And I had car accidents early on in my adulthood that caused me to go from thinking I was going to have this career in banking to being on disability and having kind of this rug pulled out from underneath of me as far as like, what I thought I was going to do, that's not what I'm doing now. And always having that entrepreneurial like excitement in me. When I was a little kid, I was writing books. I had my own little like library with its own card catalog and everything else. My girlfriends would come over, and instead of playing with Barbies, we would each write a novel in the afternoon.
Oh my God, that's adorable.
I remember having like needle and thread out, like sewing like cardboard covers onto them, making my own binding on the books and everything else, and putting little pockets on the back and charging my mom late fees when she didn't return things on time.
That is so cute.
So it's like totally a full circle moment for me to become an international best-selling author. It was like, oh my God, my inner child was like lit at that moment. And I always had little side businesses. I'd make jewelry and stuff growing up. And then one of my first like actual businesses, I did like handmade candles and soaps and things before people were really into like soy wax candles. I was making them and teaching people about the difference between that and like paraffin wax and lead wicks and things. So I always had that going on. But amidst all of that, there was also like after the car accidents, I ended up from that really kind of low and deflated place. I ended up getting into the relationship that then became my first marriage. And it was not aligned. It was one of those things where it's like, I knew it even going into it that it wasn't quite right, but I betrayed myself in, and that followed through. And I mean, there's lessons there. It was meant to be. It's all okay. I had my first son in that marriage and learned a lot about myself. but all these little wounds, big and small, just piling up over time. And I was lucky enough to meet my now husband shortly after I separated from the first marriage. And when you don't want to meet somebody, that's when they show up, right?
Yeah, same for me. Yeah.
Yeah. And we just celebrated 17 years married, and we had 3 more boys together. So yeah, it was for me like that cycle of exhaustion and distraction and dissatisfaction. It didn't break in some glamorous like aha moment. It was just in the ordinary mess of life and the accumulation of things about a decade ago. At the time, some of my kids were still pretty little, and I was recognizing the ADHD tendencies more. I hadn't yet been diagnosed. I didn't get diagnosed until I was 42, and still dealing with some chronic pain and things like that. And this brain that just never stops. And I was working then more in like health and fitness and coaching in a more like physical aspect. And I was realizing that both for myself, I had gotten in pretty great shape and was feeling pretty good about my own routines and habits and things, but recognizing that the things that I really wanted to work on were like below the surface. And also recognizing that the things that my clients were struggling with, you can give people the perfect workout plan, the perfect meal plan, and everything else, and they still might not show up for themselves over and over and over again, even if it's what they want.
The accuracy. Yes.
Yeah. So led me on that search for like the deeper things that I wanted to work on. Like, hey, what is behind these cravings? Why I fall off the wagon with a program or something like that. And that's about when I found EFT tapping.
Yeah. Before we dive into that, can I ask a few questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So you use the phrase betrayed myself, and I use that. And I suspect that there's at least somebody listening today that like, what does that mean? Can you explain it from your perspective? What happened where now in hindsight you can see, or maybe even in the moment, you're like, I totally betrayed myself.
For me, it's about self-trust and it's about intuition. And those are 2 things that I've gotten really good at dialing in on for myself, and that I'd like to think I've been able to help a lot of other people with too. But it can be tiny ways that you self-abandon what you know is true for yourself, or it can be big things like what I described, knowing that it probably wasn't the right person to marry and yet still going through with that. And in those moments, or in the accumulation of them, it's almost like you don't recognize yourself anymore. It's these yeses that you say when your body is saying no, or the way that you push through when you're fried because you should be able to handle it, or when you ignore your intuition because someone else sounds more confident or knows better, you think. All those little things where you like shrink your own desires so that you don't rock the boat. People pleasing, maybe don't want to disappoint anybody. I remember that being a big thing for me in the moment with the marriage. Like, people have paid to be here and they've sent gifts and they have a story in their head that doesn't match the story in mine. So I need to match that story and not write a new one right now.
Yeah, that resonates with me and my journey too. And something else when you were talking that caught my ear is, gosh, what's the way that you said it? What I thought I was going to do. And it just caught my attention because life rarely goes according to plan. And I have encountered some clients where there's a lot of resistance if it's not the way that they saw it, yet it rarely is. For you on your journey, how did you come to terms with that? It's not the way that I thought it was going to be, and make peace with that.
Yeah. In the moment, I don't know that I did.
Right.
In the moment, there was probably a lot of victimhood and a lot of self-pity. How do I reconcile this seemingly massive change? I would say that over time, the way that I look at things changes. I know, like, that's one of my favorite, like, Wayne Dyer quotes. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Yeah.
And I love that. It's so true. And then another one that I always come back to is, are you familiar with Byron Katie? Always kind of running her different questions through my head. And one of my favorite quotes from her, when you argue with reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time.
Always. Yeah. So I can sit here and I can fight and I can resist and I can wish that it wasn't this way, but this moment right now, this is it.
Right.
And
so, Yeah. So it's like learning to trust that what I have planned for myself isn't necessarily the best plan. I really can't imagine if I was still in banking.
Right? Such a different life.
I can't even imagine. It's just not my life at all. And I probably would still be doing something similar to that if that hadn't happened. So trusting the path more, understanding that everything is, at least in my opinion, unfolding according to some divine plan, even if I can't see it.
Agreed.
And finding more of that, not just the self-trust, but the trust in the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, that there's more going on than meets the eye, definitely helped me. And that arguing with reality. If I'm sitting there saying, well, I should be able to go and do what I was doing yesterday, even though I've had this car accident and now I can't do it today. Well, that's no, this is the way that things are right now. Yeah. So yeah, being able to question my thoughts more about that. And then how I feel when I hold those thoughts versus something that feels a little more open.
I love that so much. Yes. Yeah. And you talked about ADHD tendencies and getting a diagnosis later in life. Yeah. For someone who they've been thinking, maybe I do have ADHD, but they're in their 30s or 40s or even later, what were the things that stood out to you, or maybe about yourself, but now you see in clients that got you to that point where you're like, oh yeah, definitely.
It's so very clear. And there was never a question for me. I went in for diagnosis because all my kids had already been diagnosed. Okay. And I was like, well, maybe mom should get diagnosed too and make them feel less like they're like, hey, you got it for me. It wasn't bad. So yeah, but as far as the things that stand out, the literal and the figurative tabs that are always opened. I was on a show the other day and somebody asked me how many actual tabs I had open. I had to install a extension on my browser so that I could see because there's too many open. And it's 134 right now on my browser that are open.
I am in shock. I don't have a browser with any tabs open right now.
Well, I learned how to do the categories on my browser so that I can expand and shrink down the things. That's a very ADHD thing. The planner addiction. Tell me you have ADHD without telling me you have ADHD. I used to have a ton of planners, none of which actually did anything for me or helped me feel more organized. But every year there was that quest to figure that out. The unfinished stuff is usually an indicator. Maybe you start a lot of things, but don't finish any of them. Losing track of time, that kind of just time blindness. Although I will say there's not a human, ADHD or not, that is great with estimating time. But, it's a made up human thing to begin with, but we're not great at accounting for how long things take or estimating things when we're not sure. And then just needing pressure or a deadline in order to focus. That's another big one. That still works way more magic for me than just finish it ahead of time? Okay. And then losing things. I'm not horrible with that on my own, but I know a lot of people that recognize it later always are kind of, where did I put whatever the thing is, whether it's your keys or your calendar or whatever. So those are some things that I would say, if you're struggling with any of those repeatedly, then there could be a little bit of a ADHD thing going on there.
For sure. So you said all 4 of your sons had ADHD. So you knew, it's me. Was there ever a time where you made those tendencies mean something negative? You looked at that and felt flawed, or were you pretty neutral about it? Because I've met some people who they're like, I felt like something was wrong with me, like I was judging myself, and it turns out I had ADHD, and they got so much relief.
Yeah. I think if I'm going to be really honest about it, with my oldest son, I had the least understanding of it.
Yeah.
And it probably wasn't me saying this, but it was me more feeling oh, this is so difficult, or why can't he be easier or whatever else. I didn't understand it. And I didn't really understand either. I honestly think of ADHD like a superpower at this point. I know there's a lot of people that don't feel that way at all, and there's some real challenges to deal with, but the endless creativity, the deep hyper focus, the intuition and the pattern recognition and just the big feelings and stuff. I think that there's great ways that we can leverage all of that for good. And I wouldn't do away with it, even if I could. So I don't know. But I think with my older kids, where my awareness and my understanding were less dialed in, I was probably more like, oh my gosh, let me just give them a pill and make them normal, bigger quotes. Yeah, the more I learn, and luckily I did learn early on, I don't think any of my boys feel like it's an issue.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
I shared a reel the other day that was a few years old from my youngest, and he was building this crazy like roller coaster contraption, but not just with the pieces from the kit, but like he had brought in paper towel rolls and all the boxes of macaroni and cheese and some canned goods and some other things from all around the house to like prop up. Then he created this like blanket board over top of it and stuff. But he's going around and he's going, this is why I think I have ADHD, because I am so creative and I can build anything and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And it was like, he wanted to be like his brothers. He didn't even have a diagnosis yet. And we weren't saying anything about it, but he just saw like, oh, my brothers are so cool and they have this thing and I want it too.
Oh, I love that. That definitely is a testament to how you show up and talk about yourself and their tendencies. And hopefully somebody listening today, if they're in the stage like you were with your first son, they can hear you talking about it so positively and allow themselves to change their perspective and their beliefs about it.
It's never too late to have a different conversation about it.
Yeah.
Or like I've always made sure that my oldest knows, hey, like if medication's what works for you, then take it. And if you feel like it doesn't, don't. You get to make that choice. You're empowered there. It's not about what anybody else is thinking or trying to change about you, about how you feel.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I want to hear about EFT tapping and you moving into that space. I also heard you mention chronic pain. Do you want to talk about that at all?
It's definitely been a part of my journey and definitely also something that work with the subconscious and the nervous system have been really helpful with. So I think for somebody who's going through that kind of a thing, to know that your mind has massive power as far as changing the way that you feel physically, and that tools like EFT and hypnotherapy can really shift things, whether they're physical, emotional, mental, or even spiritual for anyone, is important to understand, because sometimes we think of these techniques as just something that can shift a certain thing or whatever. But I think one of the things that got me so interested in EFT tapping was that some people call it the try it on anything technique.
Yeah.
There's almost nothing that you can't create some kind of a shift with. And then as we keep studying things more and more and more, we're realizing how this can actually change things down to like the way your genes express themselves and things like that. It gets like really crazy and detailed the way that these changes are happening. So when people see this technique, sometimes they just see people, you know, tap in different parts of their body and it looks kind of silly and strange. And I think it gets perceived as very like woo a lot of the time. And I'm definitely not going to bash woo because I love the woo.
I love woo.
I also love that it's scientifically backed and proven.
It's
so
great.
It's like the woo and the science. That's what really lights me up.
Yes, absolutely. So your chronic pain that you were struggling with was what?
So I had some herniated discs in my neck, a lot of lower back pain. The most debilitating thing was the vertigo for years, just every day. And it was both subjective and objective. So sometimes I was spinning, sometimes things were spinning. It was, well, it was awful. And then, of course, nausea and stuff like that to go along with that, migraines. But I was between different therapies and then this kind of work subconsciously and with the nervous system, been able to improve a lot of that. No longer have the vertigo. I will get dizzy every now and then and notice I'm a little off kilter, but it doesn't seem like it's stemming from the original cause anymore. And migraines aren't even a thing for me anymore.
Oh, that's so wonderful to hear.
It's a huge difference. Pain is not fun. And it's really interesting when you do things like this too, because even if you're not focused in on the chronic pain, one of my favorite stories, I had a client show up for a session one day, and we were actually working on childhood trauma that day. We had decided in advance, we're going to tackle this thing that we've been avoiding, and we're going to work on it. And so she knew what we were planning on working on, and we stuck to the plan. But when she kind of came over to hop on Zoom, she got to get like water or something. And when she came back, I noticed she was kind of like hobbling. And I'm like, what's going on? She's like, oh, I sprained my ankle skiing the other day and it's really painful. And I was like, well, just for fun, we can call it that. Let's rate the pain that you're experiencing right now with the ankle and it being sprained, 0 to 10, and let's just see what happens. And so she gave me the number. I think it was like an 8 or a 9. And we went through and did all the childhood trauma work that we had planned on doing in that session. And then at the end, I came back and I was like, okay, cool. I know we didn't work on your ankle at all, but we've been working on other things. Well, how does the ankle feel? And she's rolling it around and she's like, feels so much better. It's still sprained, but it's more like a 4 or a 5 now. And it just really decreased because when we tap and we do these things that help with the nervous system, our cortisol levels come down.
Yes.
And pain naturally comes down. So it's like you can work on childhood trauma and you can feel more present with your kids later, or you can notice that you have less of a headache, or the way that you respond to something instead of react to it later in that day is different. So everything shifts, even if the work that you're focused on is specific.
100%. This brought up a memory of a client that I had come to one of my Bravecation retreats a couple years ago. She hadn't done yoga in years because she had so much pain in her wrists. So she's just avoided it. Well, that's part of what we do. Obviously, you get to opt in or opt out. But it was several days into the retreat, and she was in shock because she didn't have any pain in her wrists during yoga. But we had done a lot of work, unrelated, more inner child healing coming into that. And she was like, oh my gosh. And I think it had been like 5 years or something, if I'm remembering correctly, since she had been able to do yoga.
With EFT, at least, we call that borrowed benefits. And I love that it works in several different ways because we can borrow benefits from ourselves in the case of working on childhood trauma, feeling an ankle, not being as much pain. But also, like, I borrow benefits from my clients all day long because I feel better just tapping along with them, even if we're not working on something that has anything to do with my own issues. So I know a lot of therapists and things end up feeling kind of drained at the end of the day, or like, oh, they've taken on so much from the people that they've been interacting with. And I'm usually just as energized at the end of the day after tapping with people all day as I am when I started it. And I tend to like just feel better and more present and everything else because I get to borrow the benefits from just tapping along.
Yes, I can relate. I have a nervous system recalibration protocol. And when I'm actively doing the session to determine people's breathing rate, I feel the same way. I'm like, whoa. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Oh, they're paying me, but I should be paying them.
Oh, okay. So this deeper work, EFT, is what you dove into that made a substantial difference. And is there anything else you want to share? Maybe the hypnosis piece or just anything that stands out to you about your journey?
At the point where I started understanding EFT and the nervous system, that my whole business changed. Obviously, I stopped doing the more surface level type coaching and started working with people on deeper things that felt more aligned. And I'd had such a great experience myself with hypnotherapy over the years and working with different therapists myself that I definitely wanted to understand that more and be able to bring more subconscious work into what I was doing. So that's how that piece got in there. And I love those two techniques together because it's like one might have some issues with the other one can resolve and vice versa. So like when I piggyback them, it just feels like very, very complete. And it's really helped me to get through certain things that I just kind of like put a finger on like what's going on. And then the subconscious mind piece really helps you to figure it out. So that bringing all of that in is where I formulated and founded Becoming More Me, which is my business now. And I get to continue my healing journey always. Like in my book's tagline is, making the never ending journey of becoming one you want to get present for, one you enjoy getting present for. That's kind of how I see the whole thing. Business, the help. I'm still on my journey.
Same.
People that are in my world are on it too. And we all get to walk each other home.
Yeah. I love that you wrote a book. Do you have a favorite part of the book or something that you want people to know about it?
I like a lot of parts of it, but as far as writing it, it was just really fun for me to go back and think about all the things that kind of got me here and then break them down into ways that applied to other people and then weave in like the EFT. The book's actually full of different like EFT tapping rounds that people can do on really common issues for ADHD entrepreneurial moms. So I think I really enjoyed writing it because, and I write about this in the book too, the writing process was one that was so hard for me at first. And I totally put the book aside and like released it. I might not even do this field. I was like, okay, I don't know. And I spent the year after I released the project just doing podcast interviews and things like this and speaking engagements and really getting clear on things. And when I went back to it, I not only felt more clear, but I also made this commitment that I was not going to write unless it was like through the lens of just pleasure and enjoyment. And that made such a difference for me. So when I reflect on creating the book, that same feeling of pleasure and enjoyment just comes right up for me, because that was so important, because that's what shut it down. Like every time before I kind of recalibrated, it was the pushing and the striving and the masculine energy and pressure that just kept making me go like, oh, if I produce this through that energy, who is going to want to read it? And how on earth are they ever going to even benefit from it?
Gosh, I'm so glad that you took that year off and came back. Like, no, how can I come from a place of fun and enjoyment? And oh my gosh, I can totally see how the words on paper, the way that you worded it, would be totally different the year prior. Yeah.
It was a totally different energy. So that's probably my favorite part, is just reflecting on the commitment I made to myself and my readers, ultimately, that they would have an enjoyable experience when they decided to read the book.
Absolutely. I love that so much. A few people have been like, you're going to write a book. And I'm like, that doesn't feel fun for me. I don't think I'm going to, but who knows? Maybe one day. If there's a time when it does feel fun, then I'll go for it. Yeah.
If you don't feel called to do it, then I think you would probably end up creating it much in the way that I started creating mine.
Yeah.
And that's, do not recommend.
No, 10 out of 10 don't recommend.
If it feels like there's that calling to do it and you have a really great topic and idea and everything else, then it doesn't have to be difficult. I definitely made sure I had people on my team to help make the parts that I knew I was going to resist: editing, formatting. Let the publishing people do that. And you stick to the parts that work for you. I know for me, it meant doing a lot of parts of it via voice recorder before I actually typed them out, or getting them transcribed so that I didn't have to type them out, and then just editing them a little bit. So the little hacks made a big difference in making the writing process ADHD friendly.
I love how much you come from the standpoint of how can I make this work versus making yourself wrong for doing it a different way. Because very easily somebody could be like, well, I need to like sit down and write, versus you're like, nope, I'm going to get voice record because that's where I'll flow more. And then we'll get it on paper eventually. We'll get it transcribed and it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, that's the entrepreneurial journey in a nutshell.
Right.
Make it work.
Make it work, baby. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about or share, Theresa?
No, I feel very complete in our conversation. I very much enjoyed speaking with you, and I feel like we've covered a lot.
Yeah,
Is there anything else you'd like to know that I can fill in a blank for?
Yeah, let me ask you this question. So the title of this podcast, is Broken to Brave. And so a lot of women who start listening to it, there's something in their life, either emotionally, mentally, or physically, where they, at least some of the time, feel broken. If somebody listening feels broken, what would you want her to know?
Well, I don't think it's possible for anyone to be broken. I don't think that's even a possibility. And also, there's definitely other people out there that are feeling the same way. So if that brokenness is making you feel like you're somehow singled out, there's always someone out there that is sharing a similar feeling to you. And you just tap into the support that you have and the people that are in your network, or find somebody that you can talk to about that, so that you feel less alone and less broken.
Totally agree. I used to feel broken. I thought I was, and turns out I was wrong. And I think that's the most beautiful thing, is that anyone feeling broken is wrong. You're not, which is great. Yeah.
There's beauty in being wrong.
And I think so. Yes. So I will put in the show notes your Instagram link, YouTube, and your website, so women listening today can reach out and find you. Is there a best place out of those three to get in touch with you?
The easiest thing when somebody's listening to a podcast is to just say my website, which is Theresa, Theresa, Lear, Lear, Levine, Levine.com. If you go there, you can connect to all of those things. I have the simplest website. It's literally just links to the things that you want to find about me. So you won't go down some complicated ADHD rabbit hole. You can join my community from there. You can go check out YouTube. You can get free resources, whatever you want. TheresaLearLevine.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.